Have you ever wondered how many times you've been deceived without even realizing it? Can we really detect a lie, or do we simply choose to believe what comforts us? And more importantly, do you know yourself well enough to recognize when you're lying to yourself? Since childhood, we've been taught that lying is wrong. But ironically, we're also taught to tell white lies to avoid conflict, protect feelings, or simply make life easier. Lies are everywhere, in political speeches, personal relationships, exaggerated resumes, and broken promises. But what makes them so dangerous isn't just the act of lying itself, but the way they silently infiltrate our character and society. The philosopher Immanuel Kant once said that lying corrupts human dignity because it destroys trust, the foundation of any relationship. However, Nietzsche warns us that sometimes people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed. If lies can both imprison and protect us, how do we know when they are consuming us? Science has already shown that our brains react differently when we lie. Lying creates tension, requires mental effort, and even alters speech patterns and behavior. However, some liars are so skilled at manipulating reality with such ease that even a lie detector can fail to catch them. But is lying always a mistake? What if in some situations lying was necessary for survival? Throughout this video, we're going to dive into the world of deception. We'll explore why we lie, how language reveals falsehoods, and the individual and social consequences of deceit. Get ready. Some truths might be more uncomfortable than the lies you've grown used to. Lying is one of the oldest and most paradoxical human behaviors. From childhood, we learn to manipulate the truth to avoid punishment, gain favors, or simply shape how others perceive us. Lying, therefore, isn't just a rare ethical slip. It's an essentially human phenomenon, and that's precisely why it fascinates us so much. But if lying is such a natural thing, why do we condemn it? The answer lies in the impact it has on human relationships. Trust is the invisible pillar that supports societies, families, and even economies. Without it, chaos takes over. Imagine a world where we couldn't trust a doctor's words, a partner's loyalty, or a government's transparency. Collapse would be inevitable. Lying is also a tool of power. In politics, for example, leaders use falsehoods to manipulate the masses, distort history, and consolidate authority. George Orwell in 1984 already warned, "Who controls the past, controls the future. Who controls the present, controls the past." The manipulation of truth is not just a trick to escape problems, but a sophisticated form of domination. On a personal level, the game of deception manifests itself in more subtle ways. Small omissions in a relationship, resume exaggerations, fabricated excuses to avoid commitments, all are ways of distorting reality to maintain control over others' perceptions. The more someone masters the art of lying, the more power they exert over those around them. The problem is that lying doesn't just affect the victim, it also takes a toll on the liar. Psychologist Paul Ekman, one of the leading experts in lie detection, has shown that constant deception causes stress, guilt, and even physical effects, such as increased heart rate and changes in breathing. On the other hand, some people become immune to this moral burden. Some lie so frequently that their brains adapt and stop reacting with discomfort. A study published in the journal Nature Neuroscience revealed that over time, the brains of habitual liars reduce their negative emotional responses to lying, making the behavior increasingly natural. But what happens when a lie turns against the liar? Often we construct false narratives not just for others, but for ourselves. This happens when someone insists on believing they are in a healthy relationship, when in reality they are trapped in a toxic cycle. Or when a person clings to the illusion that their career is thriving, while in truth they are on the brink of collapse. Self-deception is perhaps the most dangerous lie of all because it prevents growth and perpetuates cycles of suffering. The figure of the liar is present in all cultures, often personified in the archetype of the trickster. Loki in Norse mythology and Hermes in Greek mythology are examples of deities who used lies and deception as tools to challenge norms and create new paths. In many tales and fables, the trickster is not merely a villain but an agent of transformation. This leads us to a troubling question. Can lying have a positive role? Are there moments when lying becomes a necessity? We might think of a prisoner of war who must deceive his captor to escape, or a mother who lies to protect her child from a traumatic truth. In cases like these, lying can be a tool for survival and even compassion. But where do we draw the line between a justifiable lie and a destructive deception? The answer is not simple. What we do know is that, regardless of intent, lying always comes at a cost. It requires constant mental effort to maintain consistency, strains relationships, and once discovered, is rarely forgotten. We lie to buy time, to hide flaws, to appear better than we are. But every lie is a risky game because once trust is broken, it is nearly impossible to fully restore. As Friedrich Nietzsche once said, the worst thing about a liar is not the lie itself, but the fact that afterward, we can never trust them again. Lying can be fascinating, strategic, and even necessary in some cases, but it always leaves a mark, whether on those who are deceived or on the conscience of the deceiver. Lying is a dangerous game and often an instinctive act. But what if we could decipher it? Science has been dedicated to studying how language reveals signs of deception. Since the earliest times, humanity has tried to develop ways to detect liars, from judgments based on facial expressions to the creation of sophisticated lie detectors. But do these methods really work? Studies indicate that the brain reacts differently when a person lies. Lying requires cognitive effort because it is necessary to construct a coherent narrative and sustain it over time. This mental overload often leads to small inconsistencies that can be detected by those who know where to look. A liar's language is marked by subtle patterns often imperceptible to inattentive listeners. One of the most common signs is the attempt to create distance. Instead of using personal pronouns like I or we, the liar may prefer impersonal constructions such as someone did this, or things like that happen. This psychological distancing occurs because the brain tries to reduce feelings of guilt, creating a barrier between the individual and the lie. Another interesting indicator is the excessive use of irrelevant details. Many times, a liar believes that adding extra information will make their version of events more convincing. However, paradoxically, this strategy can actually expose the deception, since truthful stories tend to be more direct. Additionally, there is an increase in negativity in speech. Research shows that unconsciously, liars use more words with a negative emotional charge, such as never, problem, bad, or difficult, because the act of lying generates internal discomfort that inevitably seeps into their speech. Language analysis is just one of the tools used to detect lies. The body also reveals truths that words try to hide. Body language, studied by experts like Paul Ekman, shows that microfacial expressions, subtle changes in voice tone, and incongruent gestures can expose a liar. For example, a person who lies may avoid eye contact or conversely exaggerate it in an attempt to appear overly trustworthy. Small delays before answering a question, touching the face, and changes in breathing patterns are classic signs of discomfort. However, none of these signs alone provide definitive proof of deception. Context is crucial. Someone may exhibit nervousness because they are anxious, not necessarily because they are lying. This is why the science of lie detection is not infallible. Even the well-known polygraph tests, which measure physiological variations such as blood pressure and sweating, can be fooled by trained individuals or by those who naturally react with anxiety, even when telling the truth. In recent years, advancements in artificial intelligence have brought new promises for identifying lies. Algorithms trained to analyze speech patterns, word choice, and even subtle variations in voice intonation have been tested as a more precise way to detect deception. However, technology faces ethical and practical challenges, as human communication is complex and does not always follow fixed rules. The fact is that despite all the tools available, truth remains a slippery concept. Detecting a lie isn't just about spotting isolated signs, it's about understanding the context, the background, and the motivation behind each statement. The big question is, are we truly prepared to recognize the truth when it stands right in front of us? More often than not, we prefer to believe comforting lies rather than face painful truths. This explains why so many people fall for scams, get swayed by manipulative speeches, or insist on believing in self-imposed illusions. Truth carries weight, and not everyone is willing to bear it. That's why, even knowing that a lie can be exposed, many still choose to use it as a tool. Lies, when practiced on a large scale, become not just an individual problem, but a structural one. They infiltrate governments, corporations, and culture so deeply that they often go unnoticed. Entire institutions are built upon carefully crafted narratives designed to maintain control over the population. The most frightening aspect is that when everyone believes a lie, it begins to feel like the truth. Writer George Orwell brilliantly portrays this in his classic 1984, showing a government that constantly rewrites history, manipulating facts to the point where the past becomes indefinable and the truth unrecognizable. This phenomenon is not confined to fiction. Throughout history, governments have used lies as a tool of power. From political propaganda that distorts reality to false promises made to win votes, deception has become not only an accepted practice, but, in many cases, an expected one. A leader who lies with conviction and consistency can be more persuasive than an honest leader who hesitates when speaking. This explains why certain political figures manage to maintain loyal followers even when clear evidence exposes their lies. A lie repeated often enough can become a dogma, something people defend not because it is true, but because they want it to be. In the corporate world, the logic is similar. Companies invest millions in advertising to create an image that often does not reflect reality. Products are marketed with exaggerated promises. Marketing campaigns exploit emotions, and information manipulation becomes part of the strategy. Financial scandals involving fraud and data manipulation are common, and when the truth comes to light, it is usually too late. The damage has already been done. Cases like Enron, a company that manipulated its financial reports until its collapse, are clear examples of how lies can sustain empires, but only for a time. The media, which should be a pillar of truth, can also fall victim to or become an agent of systemic deception. Fake news spreads at an alarming speed, and it is often difficult to distinguish real information from manipulated content. Political and ideological polarization leads people to seek only the truths that confirm their pre-existing beliefs, ignoring any facts that challenge them. This creates a dangerous cycle. Lies strengthen ideologies, which in turn reinforce the lies. The pursuit of truth becomes a solitary effort, almost an act of resistance. But why do systemic lies persist? The answer lies in fear and convenience. Questioning the truth requires effort, challenges the established order, and can have real consequences. In authoritarian regimes, those who dare to expose the lies are silenced. In democracies, they are ridiculed or ignored. And on a personal level, acknowledging that we have been deceived can be a blow to the ego, because admitting that we believed in a lie means recognizing our own vulnerability. This is the real danger of large-scale deception. It shapes reality to the point of becoming indistinguishable from the truth. When a government lies, when a company hides its mistakes, when the media distorts facts, we are not just dealing with isolated acts of deceit. We are facing an entire system designed to manipulate perception. What remains for the individual in such a scenario? How do we navigate a world where the very notion of truth is collapsing? The answer lies in personal choice. It is essential to develop a critical perspective, question information, seek reliable sources, and, above all, have the courage to confront the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. Living with honesty in a world where lying has become a conditioned reflex is no easy task. From an early age, we are taught that telling the truth is a fundamental value, yet we quickly learn that the truth is not always well received. We grow up watching adults make up excuses to avoid commitments, seeing politicians disguise their true intentions, and being exposed to advertisements that distort reality. Without even realizing it, we internalize the idea that lying, in certain doses, is acceptable or even necessary. But is it possible to break this cycle and build a life based on authenticity? The answer isn't black and white. Some lies are socially accepted, such as exaggerated compliments, polite excuses, and omissions to avoid unnecessary conflicts. The problem arises when lying becomes an automatic defense mechanism, preventing the development of genuine relationships. Being honest doesn't mean being brutally blunt to the point of hurting others. Rather, it means finding ways to express ourselves without resorting to falsehoods. In a world where communication is often filtered through masks and pretenses, being truthful becomes an almost revolutionary act. The first step in cultivating honesty is developing self-awareness. More often than not, we lie without even realizing it, especially to ourselves. We create justifications for our choices, feed illusions about our lives, and avoid facing uncomfortable truths. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre called this bad faith, the tendency to deceive ourselves to avoid the anxiety of taking responsibility for our actions. Accepting reality as it is, without distortions, requires courage. It means admitting flaws, recognizing mistakes, and letting go of comforting illusions. But only from this point can we begin to build a life based on authenticity. In the context of interpersonal relationships, honesty strengthens bonds and creates deeper connections. When we communicate transparently, we allow others to truly know us, without layers of pretense. This doesn't mean we must share everything indiscriminately, but rather that we should avoid intentionally distorting reality. In any relationship, romantic, familial, or professional, trust is essential, and even small lies can erode it over time. However, being honest also requires emotional intelligence. Not every truth needs to be delivered in a raw and direct manner. The way we express ourselves can determine whether our sincerity is received as an act of respect or as an attack. The writer Mark Twain once said, "The truth should be like a good winter coat, not a pin stuck into the flesh." The key lies in how we choose our words, balancing honesty with empathy. Another important strategy to avoid the trap of lying is to establish healthy boundaries. We often lie because we feel like we have no other choice, whether to avoid uncomfortable situations, please someone, or escape a responsibility. But instead of making up excuses, we can simply learn to say no in a respectful and assertive way. A simple "I'd rather not talk about that" or "I can't commit to that right now" can replace an unnecessary lie. The more we practice this kind of communication, the more comfortable we become with being authentic. Additionally, we need to question the way we consume information. We live in the age of post-truth, where emotions and personal beliefs often carry more weight than facts. If we want to live honestly, we must be willing to challenge our own certainties and recognize when we have been misled. This means seeking reliable sources, questioning convenient narratives, and above all, admitting when we are wrong. At the end of the day, the truth may be uncomfortable, but it is also freeing. When we let go of the lies we tell ourselves and others, we find a kind of lightness that falsehood can never offer. Honesty is not just a matter of morality, it's a matter of quality of life. A life built on truth, no matter how difficult it may seem, is always more solid than one built on illusions. If we've made it this far, it means we're willing to reflect on the role of lies in our lives. But the final question remains, are we truly ready to face the truth, even when it challenges us? Or will we continue choosing the lies that comfort us over the truths that set us free? If you've made it this far, I want to sincerely thank you. This video wasn't just an analysis of lies, it was an invitation for us to reflect together on how we choose to live our lives. I know that questioning the truth can be uncomfortable because it often means facing parts of ourselves that we'd rather ignore. But if you stayed until the end, it means you have that courage. It means you're willing to challenge your own perceptions and, who knows, maybe start making more conscious choices from now on. After all, the truth can be a burden, but it's also a form of liberation. If this video made you think, if it somehow helped you see things from a new perspective, then it was worth it. And now I want to hear from you. What's the biggest lie you've ever told yourself? Drop it in the comments. Only if you want to, of course. And if this content resonated with you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. There are other videos on the screen right now. One of them might surprise you even more about how our minds deceive us every day. But I won't tell you which one. You'll have to find out for yourself. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, remember, the truth always comes out. The question is whether we'll be ready for it.